Hello! Today we are going to go over the item creation form request. So if you are an end user getting ready to watch this video or not in the procurement team, stop, turn around, email your local purchasing team and they can help you get your items added to Coupa. This training is specific to buyers and filling out the item request form. So let's jump in. Our item request form, like the majority of our forms, are going to be located on the PNG Coupa team site on the procurement channel. And when you're at the procurement channel, you are going to go to the file section and click on buyer handout material from training, and then you will see the PNG item creation form right here. So the thing we want to make sure of when we are using this form is we don't want to actually click on the form itself, open it in Teams, and start filling things out. The reason being is we want to keep this form clean and exactly as it was downloaded so that others can use it correctly. So what we are going to do is we're going to find the correct way to use the form as well as talk about how we fill out the form correctly. So our first step is we want to do not click on the form itself. You want to click the three little buttons here, or three little dots, and then you'll see a bunch of different options. We want to select the download option. And then right here, you will see that Teams is downloading the form onto my computer. We don't want to open in SharePoint, click on it and open it, click and open it in Teams, anything like that, because that will allow us to edit within Teams, edit the original document. We always want to download it on our own computer and then edit from there. So my next step is I want to go to my own files, which I will find on my computer, downloads, wherever you're downloading things onto your own laptop or your computer. And right here you can see is the PNG item creation form. So I want to open this up. As I open it up, just be aware that this document has a lot of like hidden tabs, hidden formulas, lots of hidden code. So it does take a little bit of time to open up. And as you're using it, just be aware that it's going to be a little slower than some of the other Excel forms you may be familiar with. And that is okay. That is how it's supposed to operate. So don't worry about that. I'm going to open up the form a little bit so we can kind of see the whole thing while we're going over it today. And I would think that the first thing I want to do is jump into the attention slide here, but that is wrong. The first thing I want to do is I want to enable editing. The system is going to kind of reboot my little spreadsheet so that I can actually start to make changes to this sheet. And then I'm actually going to see this second yellow tab here, and that's enable content. So typically the only time you're going to enable content is when you know you're getting a document from a safe source, which we know we are because we downloaded it from our team site. So I'm going to enable content, and basically what that's going to do is it tells Excel that I want it to kind of start all of those formulas working in the background so I can use a bunch of my really cool little buttons and drop downs and all the neat little things that this Excel file has to help me be more efficient when I'm requesting my items. So the first little section here, I can see there's a couple little buttons. This, if I'm making a mistake, if I have used this form and already filled it out and I just want to clear it to start over to do a second request, that's the clear form button. Run validation. This is going to be super important. When you're done filling out your form, you are going to click this run validation button, and the system and all of that cool content we just enabled is actually going to run and check all our work to an extent. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And it's going to give us a green or a red to tell us, hey, you did a good job. You can submit this. We don't see any errors. Or, hey, there's some missing info here, so you need to take a look, and we will go over all the details in a second, but you're not quite ready to turn it in. And then once we have ran this validation and everything's green and the system loves us, we are going to click this send email button, and we are going to attach this form to the email that's generated through that button. So these are some really cool features, all from that enable content button. And then as you can see, it goes into the attention section here. So there's 5 big things I need to make sure I do, make sure I'm doing, make sure I'm reading, I understand. But before I jump into that, we do have a couple of additional pieces, the process flow diagram and the data dictionary to help us make sure we're filling out the form and submitting the form correctly. So down here at the bottom, you can see that I have the process flow diagram sheet. This kind of shows me what's my responsibility, what the commodity manager does, and what e-procurement does. And then the data dictionary actually outlines all of the information that is being requested, what it should look like, the description to kind of give us a little bit of more info on what this is, why it's needed, what kind of data we're asking for. So text, right? You're typing stuff in versus a drop down versus, hey, this should probably be a number. Then we go into character length. So sometimes it tells us we have 255 characters to put in a description. That is a heck of a lot. And then over here in column G, you can see sample values. This actually tells us it gives us an example of what we should be filling out, right? So kind of gives us a preview of what a description would look like, what a item purchasing questionnaire might be, what a manufacturer might be, that kind of thing. Okay, so those are some helpful tabs as we're learning and using this appropriately. Here at the top is a header information, and then down here is all the line information. So the big thing that I want to kind of stress here is anything with a red asterisk needs to be filled out. That's part of the validation process. So when you hit that little validate button to the left, that is everything that it checks to make sure that it's filled out. Now, some caveats to that. I could type here requester Charles. The system is not going to be able to tell me if I'm Charles or not, right? I'm Nikki. The spreadsheet doesn't know that. So the validation button does have some limitations like that. So we do really need to work on making sure the information we're putting in here is as accurate as possible. But we do have the data dictionary and we do have the validation to tell us, hey, that doesn't quite match. Hey, you're missing this. Hey, you should have filled this out, etc. So that is kind of what the data validator does. As we're filling this out, you can see in any of the drop-down sections here, there's predetermined information. So we need to make sure that you're not just typing random stuff in, that anywhere there is a drop-down, you are selecting from the drop-down. If you feel like there should be additional information in that drop-down, you're more than welcome to email eProcurement and suggest it. We are open to suggestions. So as I'm typing, I just want to make sure that this is my supplier number. So it does populate the supplier number from Coupa, so I can make sure that I'm picking the right supplier based on name. I can also use the drop down here, and this is not the one I want, this is, so I select it, and that's kind of how I validate I'm selecting the right supplier. I'm, again, going to put the right name in the requester column. I'm going to put my phone number here, and then I am going to select the property. So as you can see, this not only tells eProcurement what property I would like to have access to these items. In this case, I'm going to pick Hollywood Lawrenceburg. It also tells me which warehouses this item or items should be in. So in this case, I am going to select the Hollywood Lawrenceburg warehouse, but this is an easy way for me to select the warehouses and the properties that I want this item in so that eProcurement doesn't have to guess or ask me a million questions. Once I hit OK, I'm going to move on to my approver. These are going to be the commodity managers that I have applicable to me. All food and beverage items go to Corey Johnson. So that's everything that you can eat or drink. If it is a chemical or a disposable, those potentially don't go to Corey because they're not food and beverage. You may get them from the same distributors, but just as a warning, if you can't eat or drink it, it's not Corey. And then we do have the other commodity managers here, and you can check out the directory if you don't know who manages what commodity. In the bid file, it's asking us, is this a bid file item? So as you guys know, if this item has inconsistent pricing that is managed on a very frequent basis, meaning the pricing changes weekly, monthly, or quarterly, and it is not a national contract managed by a commodity manager other than Corey Johnson. So let me say that again. If it is a national contract that is managed by one of our commodity managers other than Corey, then it is not managed through the bid tool. Okay, that's managed through eProcurement and the commodity manager. If it's a property contract or a food and beverage contract, then it is bid tool. FYI, Cisco and US Foods are never managed through the bid tool because they are EDI price uploaded every Saturday. So in this case, my item is going to be managed by the bid tool. It's important to know why we are picking certain things, because this is how eProcurement is going to set things up for us, right? So once we fill out the top information, that's when we're going to come down here to the bottom information. Now, the first 3 cells here are incredibly important in telling us what information is necessary. So as we all know, there is a huge amount of columns here, right? Like I'm just scrolling, lots and lots and lots and lots of columns. At some point, guys, all of this information is necessary for us to create items in Coupa, but it may not be necessary for you right now. So the first couple things we need to do is include the item description. We always want to start with noun, adjective, and pack size. In this case, I'm going to do a beer, arrogant bastard, and it's a 6th bottle, and it is a keg. Okay, so that is my description. As you can see, I am including the noun, I'm including the adjective, and the pack size in my description, all pretty standard. And then the next couple descriptions are really important to me. So item type. As you can see, this is a drop down, and so I'm basically going to tell eProcurement, is this a food and beverage non-inventory item that's not a catch weight price? Is this a food and beverage inventory item that is a catch weight price, meaning that it is priced by the pound, ordered by the case? Is this a food and beverage non-catch inventory, non-catch weight item, food and beverage non-inventory catch weight item, a non-food inventory item, or non-food non-inventory item? So you can see there are several selections here, and it's important to know all of the selection process of this item, because as I pick this item, the spreadsheet is actually going to highlight and tell me, right? Look at this, it's blacking out specific columns that I don't need to fill out. And it's highlighting specific columns that I need to fill out. So anything that is highlighted yellow, I need to fill out. Anything that is white is optional, and anything that is grayed out, I should not fill out. Now, the other thing here is going to ask me, hey, does this item already exist in Coupa? If I say yes, it's going to immediately highlight, yes, I need to give you the item in Coupa already, and then it's going to black out a bunch of things that it doesn't need, because that already exists in Coupa as part of the item number. If this item does not exist, as you can see, it blacks out this. This turns optional, white is optional, and then, as you can see, it highlights the yellow areas that I need to fill out, okay? So, every time I select a different item in column B, it's going to highlight different columns along the edge, okay? So, these can be different in every single little area here, and it's just going to highlight as necessary. But this gives us an immediate, this is what I need to fill out, this is what's required, optional, and don't fill this out because it does not apply to your item based on your selection here. A couple things, be sure these things are always going to be optional here. The description, you do not have to fill this out. The questionnaire, this is for very specific items, whether it can be a lot of different things, but if you're not sure if it has a questionnaire on the item, the answer is no. You can just leave this blank. And then this is possibly my favorite. And this allows us to put pictures in catalogs, guys. So this is possibly my favorite optional area, and you don't have to fill this out. But if you're ever curious how to get a URL for an image, this is just a really weird example. I'm on an odd website, not ours, but I can open this image in a new tab. I can see this is just the image, and I can actually copy the web page and include it on my URL, and this picture can actually go with the item when it's uploaded into the catalog. So my end users get pictures, I get pictures. I think pictures and catalogs are the coolest thing ever. And then we get into the actual like item information. So manufacturer and supplier part number, product code and part number are different. So the product code is the person who made the item, right? If Nestle makes the item, the product code is Nestle. If the supplier who's selling it to you is Southern or Glazier's, the part number is the one that Glazier's uses in their system. So that's the difference. The stock status, does your supplier stock it in their warehouse? Does it take a couple days? Does it take a couple weeks? Does it take many months to get in, right? So all of these definitions are found on the data dictionary side. But you can see as you click in, right, there's drop downs where drop downs exist. As it highlights, as I select, it highlights more that I have to fill out to ensure that everything that is filled out correctly. Notice when I get to black areas, I just want to skip over those because those are not necessary to get this item added into Coupa. So as I go through here, I can add all of my yellow pieces. Now, if you are adding something into inventory, that is a partnership between you and your warehouse to ensure that all of the storage, consumption, and warehouse information is filled out upon the initial request of the item being added into Coupa. You can always add things to inventory later, but it's a lot easier if it's one single request when you go to add it into the system, okay? So that is the form in a nutshell, and I want to actually show you guys a form I did earlier for a beer request, and you can see I have filled out, it's opening it right now, so you'll be able to see I filled out a bunch of squares. I have 2 lines here filled out. You can see I selected the right warehouse, selected contracts, made sure Corey was my approver because I can drink this beer. And when I go to run my validation, it is going to err out on me because I did not enable the content, guys. It's really important when you're opening these big spreadsheets to enable that content. It's going to run this validation. It's going to take a second because it's doing all that calculation for me, and it is going to run green. Now, if I were to maybe not include this product code here, okay, that's blank. It shouldn't be because it's yellow. I'm going to run this validation, and if you guys note, I am going to get a red bar here. Now, we know why it's red, but let's say, for instance, we didn't. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to scroll all the way over to the right to the end of this form, and under the validation field in column AR, it's going to say, please check manufacturer product code. In this field, it will tell you what you're missing to be able to get from red to green. That's why it is important. This is basically just asking you all those questions that e-procurement would ask you if the validation button didn't exist, okay? So let's run that validation button, make sure we're getting the right codes. When it does point us in a direction that we come over here and we do put the item number in there. Once it exists, you'll notice I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to run my validation. It's going to update my spreadsheet, and I am going to see this green button. So that is kind of how the form works, where all of your tools are. At the end, I am going to save this. So I'm going to save it just like any other form. I'm going to save as. I'm going to save it in a folder. I can rename it what I would like. Okay. You save it just like you would a normal form. You don't need to worry about the content or anything like that. You don't want to mess with it and kind of save it in different formats, but as long as you just save as, put it somewhere on your computer, change the name, you're going to be fine. The next and last step, once I've validated and I have a green validate button, I am going to click this send email button. And what it's going to do is the system is actually going to generate an email for me. It's automatically going to include my commodity managers. So if I know which one this should go to, I can delete the others and just send it to the right one. I am going to enter my property ID here. So in this case, this is for Blackhawk, and I am going to attach my form. Once I'm done, I am going to just hit send here, and it will send to Corey. He'll review it. He'll let me know if I've done anything wrong so I can fix it. And if I haven't done anything and everything makes sense and it's perfect, he'll send it to e-procurement and I will get my 2 beer numbers created. Okay. So that is how the item request form functions. Really important. Download, enable editing, enable content, and then start working on your form. The last thing you want to do is run validation and make sure you get a green bar. Here's some hints in the process if you need instructions. And again, the diagram and the data dictionary are here to help you understand each one of these columns if you have any questions. Okay, so hopefully this has helped, and this is how you use the item creation form for catalog item creation in Coupa.